Hi. Last month when we were together, we talked about forgiveness and letting go and moving on. And I was really surprised about how many emails and responses I received from you letting me know that the topic really hit home. And could we continue with that topic? Would I talk about the other side of forgiveness or being forgiven? And so here we are. We'll call it Forgiveness Part 2. So I'm not an expert on these subjects. I just happen to be someone who has had a lot, a lot of practice in these areas. I think I already told you that on one side of my family, I come from a long line of people who are stubborn, can hold a grudge, can keep it going forever, and like that. So I just made up my mind early on to take after the other side of the family no matter what. And it's worked out for me. And there's been lots of other opportunities where some of the things that I have learned have helped as well. Long ago, forgiveness didn't mean what it does today. Today we draw from Western traditions, from religions, from the Bibles, from morality, and we have an idea of what forgiveness looks like. But a long time ago, before that word became translated into forgiving, it was more like what the Buddhists call Tonglen, which is more like a practice. So in this practice, you imagine different people in your life in different situations, and you wish for them the best. Not only that, but the activity is to remove from them pain and suffering and frustration, all of those things that people feel on a daily basis, and you replace that with goodwill, peace, basic goodness, all of that. And you start out slow. You start out with people who are your friends, your caretakers, people you've known for a long time. And then eventually, as the practice goes on, you work your way into what in Buddhism they call near enemies and far away or distance enemies. And we'll talk about that at a different time. But what the practice includes as well is a kind of self-love and self-compassion. And in the beginning, you don't realize that that's what's happening. It sort of sneaks its way in later on. And then you realize how we really don't take on anyone else's burdens or suffering. And we do learn how to exchange one kind of energy for another. For something, give something. And that's a little bit truer to the world itself. In our Western culture, it's a little harder to do that. Our world is divisive, especially right now. It's judgmental, and sometimes saying I'm sorry is not enough. Not everyone believes in second chances, and some people won't even accept an apology, even when it's very sincere. I know someone who, if the word sorry is included in any sentence, that constitutes an apology. So if they said, I'm sorry you feel that way, that would be an apology. So clearly we are on uneven ground on these topics that we all participate in every day. So forgiveness comes about, kind of depends on the person and the situation and someone's tolerance and what they learned in early life, the events that followed them in life. And there's no exact formula for a moment or for a person. We kind of have to see how they respond. And most of the time that doesn't happen until things go sideways. I know people who won't throw away a paperclip because it's still useful, but they throw relationships away as if they were nothing. So we go that way. Some people have a naturally forgiving nature, and other people don't. They weren't born that way into their own being. They didn't have role models that showed them that early on, or even later in life. Chances are that might change in their life. There will be better examples. It may not be us. It may not be you or I that bring those fine examples to them and to reap the benefits of what we've offered or what we've shared or the patience that we have, anything like that. But maybe someone else will. And our words and actions do make a difference. They really do. I'm not a statistics person. I don't look for them. But I found one in putting together this conversation for us that I think I want to tell you. So I want to get this right. So among all cancer patients, 61% have forgiveness issues. That's pretty big. So in this way, forgiveness, it's like the big kind of forgiveness. It's an inability to forgive. And because it's so encompassing in the medical profession, in the medical diaries, in the medical books, it's considered an actual disease. So, and there's therapies. There's therapies associated with forgiving and everything associated with it. And they are therapies designed to help the heart, the mind, the body, cancer, all of that. So I'm hoping not to go that way, that direction. I'm hoping you won't go that direction either. If you've made a mess of things, and sometimes we do, a sincere apology goes a long way. Offering an apology is not a sign of weakness. It's actually the most direct course to freedom or to moving through something that's going on. But offering an apology does not mean that others are going to accept it. And we can't force someone to forgive us. It's not completely up to us. We can't chase forgiveness around, hoping it'll come around just because we want it to. Sometimes people want to hold a grudge. There's a kind of an energy to it. And some people really need to have the opposites. People who have very close friends, and they need to have the opposite. They need to have some enemies or adversaries, we could call them as well. So if an apology is not enough, do your best to clean things up. Don't wait. Don't let things fester. Don't take the first step. Don't wait for another person to be the one to make overtures first. Chances are, some people, most people can't, don't, won't. So it's a big thing to do, to take that first step, no matter what it is. It might be up to us to step up, and that's a good exercise for us as well too. If it feels right, then making amends is a good idea. And that word, we throw that around a lot, amends. I want to give you the definition that I like the most about amends. So making amends means doing something to correct a mistake or a bad situation that your words or actions have caused. So it doesn't say what you have to do or in what length of time or how it has to be accepted or what category of life it has to be in. That, for me, that works. That works pretty well. I also want to give you the definition of true forgiveness. True forgiveness is a conscious decision to release feelings of resentment with no more underlying claims for compensation. It doesn't always go that way. Forgiveness doesn't always look like that. It hasn't always looked that way for me. Some people need time. Some people need time, to let go of some of the resentments, maybe. And sometimes you won't know what to do about that. If someone says they need time, then they are communicating with you and telling you exactly what they need. And there's something really good about that because it's all out in the open. They're telling you they need time. And you don't know how long that time is going to be, but whatever it is, it's out in the open. It's not something that is covert or hidden where you're trying to figure out what you did or when they're going to tell you or when they're going to let you off the hook. So if someone says they need time, that's actually a good thing. But there's other kinds of forgiveness that we could say is either false or temporary or even toxic. And in those cases, it doesn't matter what we say or what we do or how often it happens. We are going to be in debt for a while. And we will maybe never know when that debt is paid in full. And that's when we need to look at the moving on and letting go part. So let's talk about that next. Forgiveness is not a reconciliation. So even if someone accepts your apology, likely things won't go back to the way they were. The dynamic, the relationship has been changed or altered. Once in a while, things go back to the way they were, but that is more rare. It's more likely that they won't. So that means that for us to feel okay again about ourselves, knowing that we may not be forgiven and yet we need closure or an understanding about that person or about that subject, we look at how to let go and how to move on. So relationships usually operate on the emotional level, not necessarily on the mental clarity level. That comes. It comes for some people sooner rather than later. For some people it comes later, the same way with maturity or anything else in life. So what you can do in that situation is forgive the person who hasn't forgiven you yet. So that's a kind of closure. And it's not something you would say to someone. You don't need to say to them, well, it's okay that you're not forgiving me. I will forgive you for the both of us. So it's not exactly that. It's more something that you do for yourself. You forgive them. You forgive the situation, regardless of what it was. Something got messed up. Something got in the way. And you've done your best to either apologize or make amends, bring clarity, restitution, if you want to call it that. And for right now, at least, you can't. So that's the part where then you forgive the person, forgive yourself, and you begin to let go of it. Let go of it doesn't mean that you ignore it or I'm going to just forget you and forget that I did that. You set it aside. You're aware of it. You know that it's there. It's on the shelf. It's something that you're going to come back to. But in the meantime, until you do, you need to live your life. And you need to live your life as fully as possible. And that means letting go and moving forward. So you continue to do your work in other areas of life. If some of those areas of life are relationships, you continue to do your best, offer your best in other relationships to demonstrate the best of those abilities. Someone, as part of the communications I received, someone wrote to ask whether I think that there are certain things that are unforgivable. And I thought about it. Not the first time I thought about it. I think it's an individual thing. I think it depends for most people on what their level of tolerance is. Maybe it depends on how long their life is. Maybe if they're younger, they have lots of years ahead of them to think about it, or so it seems. Maybe if you're older and you think time is not so long, maybe you think, I don't want to hold on to that, and I want to release that. So yes, whatever it is forgivable rather than unforgivable. For me, because the question was asked, I can say that in my world and in all the experiences that I've had, there have been some really rough ones, I would say that everything is forgivable, but that some things are not forgivable yet. Some things are not now, some things are not yet, but in my true heart, I believe that all things are forgivable. I believe that we are all good at our core, that we are all pure love at our core. And that's not always what manifests in the story of our life. I'm not a judge. I'm not a judging person for the most part. So if something was forgivable or unforgivable, I don't think it would be for me to decide it. I've always done my best to stay away from juries. I have been fortunate my whole life. I have not had to be on a jury for anything, and I don't want to be. I don't want to be a judge for anything. So the other question that I received as part of this subject says, how many people have I still not forgiven? A number. How many people have not forgiven me? And how many people I may owe an apology to? Ouch. That's what I get for inviting all of your questions and saying, write to me, write to me. So, okay, I actually did consider all of that, and it was a good exercise as well. I have to say that it was. Okay, so on my bucket list, there is one person that I have not forgiven yet, not at all. And I just haven't turned my attention in that direction yet. I plan to one day. It's not high on my priority list. This particular situation involves a crime. And I think for some of us, that is harder to reconcile. But I believe I'm going to get there. I still have a few residues and resentments that I'm holding on to with a few relationships, but that's on me. It's not on anyone else, and it's the kind of thing that's just fading away on its own. I don't have to do anything about it. I don't think about it anymore. It's not a thing anymore, and whatever residues are there will take care of themselves and don't require me to go to someone and say, I need this from you, or I need to give you that for this to be complete for me. It's just the residue. So there's one person I can think of who has not forgiven me, and in that case, I cannot think of anything that I haven't said or done or tried, invoked, called upon, asked for assistance for. So in this case, letting go and moving on is what is left to me, so that I don't walk around with it all the time. So I am taking steps, have taken steps to let go of that And at the same time, I remain open and hopeful that that may change one day. As to who I may owe an apology to, I would say everyone. I can't think of anyone that I would not offer an apology to. There are people I forgot to thank, people who did not get the best of me for whatever reason. There are situations that I could say that I regret, that I am responsible for in some ways. Things and people that I have taken for granted, or situations that I've been completely unaware of, unconscious about. So yeah, I would offer an apology to almost everyone, and even to future generations that may not inherit the kind of earth that I did, or that I would like them to inherit. I would apologize for that as well. It doesn't matter whether it's my fault or not, or whose fault it is. I'm not pointing fingers at anyone else, and I'm not pointing them back at myself. It's just an acknowledgement that says, I care from my heart. I apologize that you will have a different experience than the one that I have. So it's a very gentle thing that way. So, okay, I took on the challenge and I answered these questions publicly. So now it's your turn. I would like for you to do the same exercise that I was asked to do. When you get a moment, make a list. Who have you not forgiven yet? It'll be pretty obvious. Who hasn't forgiven you? What are you still holding on to? That kind of stuff. And then over time, right away, if you can, or over time, do your best to shorten that list and see how that goes. It always seems that we have all the time in the world to do these things, and in a sense, we do. We have all the time in the world that's been allotted to us in this life. We just don't know how long that will be. And since we don't know, I don't know, then I don't want to wait until the last minute. And so I'm doing my work now to the best of my ability. And I would offer to you that suggestion as well. I have been with people near the end of their life, and if there are regrets, mostly it's in this area. So whatever we can do about that now, I think is a great idea. So I hope these suggestions are helpful to you, and they have been helpful to me. So I think I remember telling you that there was one person each in some of these categories. And it's not because my life is so blessed in those areas that there's just one person and everything else is just blessed and fine. It's not that way at all. It's because I have encountered these situations a lot and often in my life, and so I have done this work. I have done the forgiving. I have, in most cases, been forgiven, and I have let go when I've had to, and I have moved on when I've had to. So what's left there is not just because, oh, things are so great for Pepper. It's because I work at them and often. And really, it's just easier whenever possible to let things go. I do not want you or I to end up in that statistic that says 61% of people in this disease called unforgiveness. I don't want to end up in that column. And I wouldn't want that for you either. So, thanks for getting together with me today. It's always a pleasure, and we'll do it as often as we can.